Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to the channel. UFC 286, Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3 happened this past weekend, and there was a lot of notable fights on this card, and there was a lot that we learned from UFC 286, and this is going to be my top 3 takeaways from UFC 286. I'm going to go from 3 to 1 in order of importance, but I'm going to start off with some honorable mentions, because honestly, there is a lot that we learned at UFC 286. Some of the things that I'm going to mention, we kind of already knew, but they were further cemented at UFC 286. But before I get into any of my reasons, guys, do me a favor and comment down below what were some of your takeaways after watching UFC 286. So starting off with the honorable mentions, and I have a couple honorable mentions, so I'm going to try to go through them pretty fast here. But starting off with the first honorable mention, Makwan Amirkhani may have the worst gas tank in the UFC, and he needs to be cut from the UFC. You have Makwan Amirkhani. Thank God he lost. He lost to Jack Shore. He got finished in the second round. We needed justice for Mike Grundy's dad. But on top of that, you look at Makwan Amirkhani, he's lost 5 out of his last 6 fights. The only win he has is against Mike Grundy back in March of last year, where he submitted him in the first round. But if you get Makwan Amirkhani out of the first round, chances are you're probably going to finish him. You look at Jack Shore. Jack Shore lost the first round, finished Makwan Amirkhani in the second round. He got finished by Jonathan Pierce in the second round. He got finished by Lerone Murphy in the second round. You go back all the way back to Shane Burgos, got finished by Shane Burgos in the third round. Of all the fights that Makwan Amirkhani has lost via finish, every single one of them except one, he's been finished in the second or third round. It's time for him to be cut from the organization. He has no gas tank. He's never worked on his gas tank. He's been in the UFC all the way since back in 2015. He's been in the UFC for 8 years, and he still doesn't have any cardio. It's time for the UFC to part ways. Moving on to another honorable mention. I thought about putting this one on the list. We have Muhammad Mokaev. May have sacrificed his career for one solid win, because at UFC 286, Fialho, his opponent in the third round, had him in a fully extended knee bar where the knee was completely bending the opposite way and Mokaev refused to tap. We don't know what's going on with him yet. His knee is all swollen, but he hasn't had an MRI yet. We haven't heard the results of an MRI yet. But he may have torn ligaments in his knee, and most likely he has torn ligaments in his knee. And we've seen with certain fighters, going back to Thiago Santos, where they tear their knee, they tear an ACL, an MCL, whatever it may be, and then they are never the same again. And Mokaev is still so young. He's only 22 years old. He had talks of, I hope to be the youngest UFC flyweight champion or the youngest UFC champion in general. Now, most likely, he's going to sit out for a year, 2 years maybe even, depending on the extent of the damage in the knee. And I wonder, was it worth it? Was it worth it at 22 years old to maybe drastically affect your entire career? I hope that it doesn't. I hope that he gets a speedy recovery. I hope he doesn't have any serious injuries. But just looking at that extended knee bar, it's hard to imagine that Mokaev doesn't have serious injuries in that knee after what Fialho put him in that third round. He showed grit. He showed determination. After he gets out of the knee bar, he gets the finish in the third round, but still, was it worth it? Could he have sacrificed his entire career just to get the win at UFC 286? So that was a thing that I thought about putting on the actual list, but I figured it was an honorable mention. And then I have one more honorable mention, and that is that Marvin Vettori or Roman Dolidze will never be a UFC champion. They didn't look good at UFC 286 at all. The striking wasn't pretty. The skill set, I mean, it was just a sloppy fight. It wasn't particularly exciting. Roman Dolidze has shown that he has great power, and he also has very good jiu-jitsu. But that combination of skill isn't going to work against a guy like Israel Adesanya. It's not going to work against a guy like Alex Pereira. Maybe if you can get Alex Pereira down, it would. But I just don't think, you look at the top of the division, Robert Whittaker, Israel Adesanya. I don't see Roman Dolidze or Marvin Vettori ever beating either one of those guys. And you have Marvin Vettori, who's already fought both those guys and got outclassed. They both look very sloppy on the feet. I get it. They went 3 rounds. They're both ranked in the top 10. The middleweight division is just not looking pretty currently. You got Dricus du Plessis at number 6 in the division. And I just think what I saw at UFC 286, I know Marvin Vettori is still very young. He's still only 29 years old, which was shocking to me going into this fight. But Roman Dolidze is in his mid-30s already. And I understand that higher the weight class goes, the longer you have a career longevity. But I just don't think slow, sloppy striking with good power and then amazing jiu-jitsu is going to work against a guy like Israel Adesanya or Robert Whittaker or even Alex Pereira. I mean, obviously they could maybe out-wrestle him, but he's working on his wrestling. He may not be around for long. Even if he beats Adesanya, he may move up to light heavyweight, or he may eventually just retire. It's hard to say with that massive weight cut that he has. But I don't think Marvin Vettori or Roman Dolidze will ever be a number one contender, and I don't believe they will ever fight for a title or ever hold a title. Moving on to the actual list, starting off with number 3, and this isn't even a fighter who fought at UFC 286, but my number 3 takeaway from UFC 286 is Colby Covington will be one of the most undeserving title contenders in UFC history. The guy is 2-2 in his last 4 fights, and he's lost 2 of them, which were actual title shots against Kamaru Usman, who just lost twice to Leon Edwards. You have Bilal Muhammad on a long win streak in the division, and guess what? He has 3 wins over top 10 ranked guys, or at least they were top 10 ranked at the time, and I believe they still are top 10 ranked currently. You have Colby Covington, who has one of the worst resumes in MMA, and everyone elevates him off of 2 losses, one being a stoppage loss to Kamaru Usman. Well, he did great in those fights. You know, the one fight could have been a draw maybe, and the other fight, oh, well, he shouldn't have got finished. It was a bad stoppage. This man is being elevated off of losses to Kamaru Usman. Outside of that, he's riding the coattails of a win over Damian Maia that's 7 or 8 years ago. Are we serious? I mean, we might as well give Colby Covington a participation belt just for competing with Kamaru Usman and having competitive fights. That's what we might as well do at this point. You have Bilal Muhammad, who deserves a title shot more than him. You have Gilbert Burns, who arguably could deserve a shot more than him. I mean, Colby Covington sat out for over a year, and people are saying, oh, it's only been a year. He fought last March. It's been over a year at this point. Colby Covington has turned down countless fights against Khamzat Chimaev. He turned down a fight back in, I believe it was 2021, against Leon Edwards, saying Leon Edwards didn't deserve to fight him. He's turned down fight after fight after fight. You have Bilal Muhammad, who deserves a title shot. Khamzat Chimaev, who I know he's going up to middleweight, deserves a title shot more than Colby Covington. Even Shavkat Rakhmonov deserves a title shot with his win over Neil Magny and his recent win over Jeff Neal. He deserves a welterweight title shot more than Colby Covington. The guy has sat out for over a year, and he's refused to sign a fight. He's turned down multiple fights, and all of a sudden, he's being awarded with a title shot. He has Dana White privilege, and I think it's disturbing, and I think the people going out there, you see a lot of fans saying, Colby draws money, and Colby's a star, and he's popular, and this is a business. What I say to those fans is, are you getting a cut of those checks? Are you being paid from the UFC based on pay-per-view buys? I'm genuinely curious, because half of the people saying that are usually pirating the pay-per-views, and they're not actually buying the pay-per-views anyway. So what do you care? What do you care if he draws or not? We should see the most deserving contenders fight for the belt at all times. And I understand that sometimes there's a gray area. Colby Covington is on a 1-fight win streak. A 1-fight win streak. And it's against Jorge Masvidal, who at the time was ranked in the top 10. But he's not anymore. And there's no way that Colby Covington deserves a title shot. Now, I know I mentioned Gilbert Burns. Gilbert Burns is kind of on the fringe. He's in the same situation as Colby. He obviously has a fight coming up with Jorge Masvidal. I don't believe Gilbert Burns deserves a shot at the title. I don't believe Jorge Masvidal with the win deserves a shot at the title. I think that would be even more egregious than giving Colby Covington a title shot. The only logical explanation for Colby getting a title shot is Bilal Muhammad's injured, Shavkat Rakhmonov is injured, and Khamzat Chimaev's moving up to middleweight. That is the only logical explanation. He does not deserve a title shot. He's essentially, a mentally disturbed version of Chael Sonnen, who's talked his way into a title shot just because he's going out there and talking all this crap in the media. And I guess the UFC sees, Colby generates clicks on Instagram. So we're going to give him a title shot against Leon Edwards. Well, Leon Edwards is saying he doesn't want that fight. And for those of you guys who are going to say Leon Edwards is scared of Colby, I think that's a little bit crazy. But this is a topic for another video. Colby is one of the most undeserving title contenders in UFC history. I don't know where he falls on that list, but he definitely exists on that list. And I think, for the people saying, Bilal Muhammad, he's so boring, blah, blah, blah. I thought we were in this to watch the best versus the best. If you wanted to see specialized hand-picked matchmaking, maybe you should go watch the WWE. That's what I think you should do. So Colby Covington getting a title shot just because he's the backup at UFC 286, I think is disturbing. And that is my number 3 takeaway from UFC 286. Moving on to my number 2 takeaway from UFC 286. And this is kind of 2 reasons folded into one. One is Justin Gaethje is massively underrated. And 2, Rafael Fiziev is not a fraud. And what I mean by that is Justin Gaethje with a jab is a new mythical UFC fighter at this point, because a lot of people counted him out going in this fight. I picked against him. I picked Rafael Fiziev. But I told you guys, I said, look, Justin Gaethje should not be counted out in this fight. He's a very good fighter. And what did he do? He went out there, he lost the first round, but he won the second and third. And the third, he was just pumping the jab over and over and over again. And look at Rafael Fiziev's face after the fact. He was absolutely brutalized. And I understand that visual damage, people get it confused all the time. Visual damage does not win you fights, okay? It's damage in general wins you fight. It can be concussive damage. But the fact that most people were saying, oh, Justin Gaethje is scared of Rafael Fiziev. He doesn't want to fight Rafael Fiziev. And I told people, we need to pump the brakes. We don't know. He may eventually fight Rafael Fiziev anyway. He inevitably fights Rafael Fiziev. He goes out there and beats him. And he had an amazing performance and he looked really good. Now, and the other part of this is people are now saying, because Justin Gaethje won and he looked very good, they are saying that Rafael Fiziev is somehow a fraud now. And Justin Gaethje proved that Fiziev is a fraud. I think, if anything, this solidified my opinion personally that Rafael Fiziev is the elite of the elite at lightweight. And I know people are saying, well, how do you think that he lost? Well, he competed against one of the known best. We know what we have in Justin Gaethje. And I know some people are acting like Justin Gaethje's washed up and he's old and he's Homer Simpson. I never thought that. I thought Justin Gaethje was still one of the elite lightweights. And he took this fight against surging Rafael Fiziev, and Fiziev looked very good in this fight. First round, he won the first round. Second round, very competitive. You could even make an argument, I think, for Fiziev. I wouldn't make that argument at all. I think it's a little bit crazy. But it was a very competitive second round. In the third round, like the first minute of the third round, Fiziev even looked good there. It was just the overall experience of Justin Gaethje. It was the jab of Justin Gaethje. It was the leg kicks of Justin Gaethje. He went out there and proved that not always in the sport are we going to have the young eating the old, because we look back, a lot of people thought Mateusz Gamrot was going to beat Beneil Dariush. Guess what? Beneil Dariush beat him and sent him to the back of the line. A lot of people thought, oh, Fiziev's going to go out there and brutally KO Justin Gaethje. That's not what happened at all. That's not what happened at all. It was a very competitive fight. Justin Gaethje wins via decision. And I think both guys' stocks goes through the roof after this fight. Fiziev has proven that he is legit at 155 pounds. You could make a case before, oh, he beat a washed-up RDA. I don't necessarily believe that, but I understand that RDA is on the decline in his career. You could say, oh, well, he beat Brad Riddell. Well, Brad Riddell was on his way out. Now we've seen him against a known guy in Justin Gaethje. We know where Gaethje's skill set is. Justin Gaethje has 2 losses in the last couple of years, Charles Oliveira and Khabib Nurmagomedov. Not bad losses to have. And I think Fiziev proved himself as one of the top guys at 155 pounds, but also Justin Gaethje proved that he is still a force in the lightweight division and can be in title contention in maybe 1 or 2 more fights. Honestly, he may be fighting for the title after 1 more fight, depending on who the UFC matches him up with. Moving on to the number 1 takeaway from UFC 286, and that is that Kamaru Usman will never be welterweight champion again. Kamaru Usman is getting up there in age. Kamaru Usman loses to Leon Edwards in a very competitive fight, and that's kind of another takeaway I have from this fight. You know, a lot of people are acting like, oh, Leon Edwards got a dominant win here. It was a very competitive fight. I thought it was a draw. I'm going to go back and rewatch. I'm going to do another video on discussing the decision between Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman. But nonetheless, Kamaru Usman has now lost twice to Leon Edwards in a row, once by finish and once by decision. Kamaru Usman is 35 years old. He's been on top for a while, and it's just going to be the natural decline. You can only stay on top for so long. And can Kamaru Usman go out and get a win in the top 5 and then maybe be right back in title contention? Yes, he can. But guess what? He's 35 going on 36. The contenders are only getting better. You have Shavkat Rakhmonov making his way to the top of the division right now. You have Colby Covington, who's getting up there in age as well. But, you know, he's not as weathered as Kamaru Usman. He hasn't been as active as Kamaru Usman. You have Leon Edwards, who I think Kamaru Usman at UFC 286 could have beaten him, but he didn't. And guess what? Leon Edwards is only going to get better. So I see an aging Kamaru Usman and then I see, a Colby Covington who hasn't taken nowhere near as much damage, who is improving. I see a Leon Edwards who is way younger and improving. I see a Shavkat Rakhmonov making his way up the rankings. We don't know about Khamzat Chimaev. He may hang around at welterweight. And I just don't see Kamaru Usman being able to get a big win and then come back and win a title. I just don't think it's going to happen. He's getting old. He's slowing down. And it's just the laws of percentages. You can only win and you can only stay on top for so long. We saw it with Valentina Shevchenko. We saw what happened in that Alexa Grasso fight. We saw what happened to Amanda Nunes against Juliana Pena. She got a bit complacent and she lost her belt. Now, she got it back in her case, but that's a whole different scenario, the women's bantamweight division. That is nowhere near the Shark Tank of the men's 170-pound division. So I don't think that Kamaru Usman will ever be a champ again, just because it's going to be so difficult with the surging 170-pound contenders. The fact that these guys who he was reigning over top of for so long are getting better. Their skill sets are improving. Leon Edwards won this third fight because he improved drastically over the second fight, and he came in with a much better game plan. Meanwhile, Kamaru Usman, while he is the elite of the elite and he was champion for many years, he hasn't really changed. When I look at a future title contender, when I look at a future champion, I know Kamaru Usman's now a former champion, but I look at a fighter who's improving fight over fight. And while Kamaru Usman continued to win for the last, 3 or 4 years, he hasn't really improved. He's had the same basic skill set that he's had since he became champion. Maybe he refined the striking a little bit, but I just don't think the division is, the division is just slowly creeping up, and now it's surpassed him a little bit. And I just don't think at his advanced age, even if he goes out, let's say he gets another fight by the end of the year and he wins that fight at the end of this year. And then let's say the UFC, okay, we're going to give you a shot in the middle of 2024, depending on how the welterweight division plays out. Kamaru Usman's now going to be going on 37, maybe 38 by the time that happens, if it's not till 2025. Maybe they make him wait and win 2 fights before he gets a title shot, depending on who's the champion is. I just don't see Kamaru Usman being able to step in the cage against a champion in a year and a half, 2 years, and make the improvements necessary to win that fight. So I think UFC 286 was kind of the burial of Kamaru Usman as a welterweight champion. I could be wrong. There could be a way that he could jump into a title shot. Maybe Colby Covington wins against Leon Edwards. Then you have that whole storyline where Kamaru Usman, former champion, beat Colby twice, and now is getting a third fight where Colby's the actual champion. But I just don't think that is highly likely, and I think Kamaru Usman will never be champion again. But let me know what you guys think about all my takeaways from UFC 286. Don't forget to comment down below and let me know some takeaways that you had after watching UFC 286. And do me a favor, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, and thank you so much for watching.